Baby, take a breath with me, because this one made a whole lot of folks sit straight up in their chairs. The United States Supreme Court just handed down a 9-0 decision in a major gun case. Not 5-4, not 6-3, not one of those messy split decisions where everybody is fussing and finger pointing. No, honey. All 9 justices agreed. And anytime this court agrees on something that big in the middle of a country that argues over guns like folks argue over who makes the best potato salad, you know it matters. Now, let me tell you something clearly. When people hear Supreme Court, gun law, and 9-0 bombshell, some folks instantly assume, oh Lord, did they just expand gun rights everywhere? Or they think, did they ban something? Or does this mean every gun law in America just changed overnight? Sweetie, no. And this is exactly why Auntie Grace is going to break this down for you, because a lot of these headlines come in hot, loud, and half-dressed. What the court actually ruled was this: Mexico cannot move forward with its lawsuit trying to hold major American gun manufacturers legally responsible for cartel violence and gun trafficking harms in Mexico. That is the heart of it. It was a big case, a billion-dollar kind of case, and the court said that under current federal law, that lawsuit is blocked. So yes, it is a big deal, but I want you calm, informed, and steady, not panicked, not puffed up, and not fooled by folks online who love drama more than truth. The simple explanation. All right, honey, let's bring this down from legal language to kitchen table language. The case was called Smith & Wesson Brands, Inc. v. Estados Unidos Mexicanos. That fancy last part just means the government of Mexico. Mexico sued several major U.S. gun companies and said, in plain English, your business practices help guns get trafficked into our country, and those guns are used by violent cartels. So we want to hold you responsible. Mexico was seeking billions of dollars and wanted changes to how those companies operate. Now, why did Mexico even think it had a case? Because Mexico argued that these gun companies weren't just sitting there making legal products and minding their business. Mexico said the companies knew some dealers and sales channels were feeding the illegal gun pipeline, and that the companies kept doing business in ways that made trafficking easier. In other words, Mexico was saying, you may not be pulling the trigger, but you are helping the guns get into dangerous hands. And the gun company said, absolutely not. We make legal products we sell through lawful channels. If criminals misuse those products later, that is not our legal fault. Now here comes the key law in this whole thing, and I want you to understand this clearly. There is a federal law from 2005 called the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms, or PCAAA. Baby, that is a mouthful, but the basic idea is simple. This law gives gun makers and gun sellers a pretty strong shield against many lawsuits when somebody else, some third party, uses a gun in a crime. Congress passed that law to stop a wave of lawsuits trying to make gun companies pay for violence committed by criminals. Now, that shield is not absolute. There are exceptions. One important exception says if a gun company knowingly violates a specific law about selling or marketing guns, and that violation helps cause harm, then a lawsuit might still go forward. That little opening in the law is what Mexico tried to use. But the Supreme Court said, unanimously, no. Mexico did not plausibly show that these manufacturers actually aided and abetted illegal gun sales in the specific way the law requires. Let me translate that from lawyer speak into human speak. The court basically said, you can't just say these companies should have known bad things would happen. You have to show stronger, more concrete facts that they knowingly helped illegal sales. And the justices said Mexico's complaint did not do that well enough. That is why the ruling was 9-0. Not because every justice agrees on every gun issue in America. Lord, no. It was unanimous because in this specific case, they all agreed the lawsuit ran into the shield Congress already built into federal law. Now let's talk about that 9-0 part, because folks hear unanimous and think the court just dropped some giant moral sermon from the mountaintop. Sometimes a 9-0 ruling means the law was written in a way that boxed the court in. Sometimes it means the facts weren't strong enough. Sometimes it means the justices may disagree on bigger theories, but they all agree this particular lawsuit doesn't fit. That is what happened here. Justice Elena Kagan wrote the opinion for the whole court, and the court said Mexico's claims looked a lot like the kind of lawsuits Congress wanted to block when it passed PCAAL. The court also said Mexico did not point to specific enough criminal transactions or specific enough unlawful conduct by the manufacturers themselves. In Auntie language, the court said the accusations were too broad and too general to break through the legal shield. So if somebody tells you, this means the Supreme Court just ruled gun companies can do anything they want, that is not right. And if somebody tells you, this means all gun control efforts are dead, sweetie, they are mixing up cases like they mix up salt and sugar. This case was not mainly about whether an individual has a Second Amendment right to carry a gun. It was not about whether assault weapons are legal nationwide. It was not about whether background checks are gone. It was not about whether states can never regulate guns. This was about civil liability, who can be sued, under what circumstances, and whether this specific lawsuit against gun manufacturers could continue. That is the bombshell. The court strongly reinforced the legal shield protecting gun manufacturers from being sued for the criminal misuse of their products by third parties. What changed? Now let's answer the question people really want answered. What changed now? Here is the honest answer. In one sense, nothing brand new was invented today because the shielding law, PLCAA, was already on the books. The Supreme Court did not create that law. Congress did. But what did change is that the court just gave a very strong, unanimous explanation of how hard it is to get around that law. That matters. Before this decision, some people hoped lawsuits like Mexico's could open a wider door for holding gun companies responsible when their products end up fueling violence. The court just said that door is still very narrow. Real narrow. Hairline narrow. The justices said that broad claims like, you knew some guns would be trafficked, or your distribution system indirectly helps bad people, are not enough by themselves. To get past the shield, you need much more specific allegations that the manufacturers knowingly violated a gun sales or gun marketing law and really participated in that wrongdoing in a concrete way. So practically speaking, this decision makes it harder for governments or plaintiffs to use broad trafficking theories to sue gun manufacturers for violence committed by criminals far downstream. That is the real effect. Now, did the court say no lawsuit against a gun company can ever succeed? No, and that part is important too. The Associated Press noted that the ruling does not appear to shut down every case, including certain cases tied to specific alleged illegal marketing or other specific legal violations. People often point to the Sandy Hook family's case against Remington as an example of a different path, one tied to claims about marketing practices under state law, which ended in a settlement. Source. So the new reality is not gun companies are untouchable forever under all facts. The new reality is this. If you want to sue them, you had better come with a very specific, legally grounded, fact-heavy case. No hand-waving, no big dramatic story without receipts, no everybody knows what's happening arguments. The Supreme Court said that is not enough. Now, let me bring this home, because some of y'all are saying, Auntie Grace, I don't live in Mexico. Why do I care? Because this ruling touches the bigger American fight over guns, responsibility, and safety. First, it matters to gun manufacturers and the firearms industry because they just got a major win. A unanimous Supreme Court decision gives them strong legal backing when future lawsuits try to blame them for crimes committed by others using their products. Second, it matters to gun control advocates because one strategy, using large civil lawsuits to pressure the industry, just got a lot harder in cases like this. That means if they want change, they may push even harder for legislation, stricter state laws, dealer oversight, trafficking enforcement, or more targeted lawsuits based on very specific conduct. Third, it matters to states because states still have room to pass and defend certain gun regulations, but they cannot count on broad liability theories against manufacturers as an easy shortcut. If lawmakers want stronger accountability, they may need to write clearer laws and target specific conduct. Fourth, it matters to gun owners because some will see this as a protection against unfair blame. A lot of lawful gun owners believe gun makers should not be punished simply because criminals steal, traffic, or misuse firearms. They hear this ruling and say, exactly, responsibility belongs with the criminal. That is a real and sincere view. But on the other side, a lot of people worried about gun violence hear this and say, so the industry keeps its shield while communities keep burying loved ones? They believe the law gives this industry protections that many other industries would never enjoy. That is also a real and sincere view. And let me tell you something. If you only listen to one side, you will understand half the country and misread the other half. This case also matters because it reminds us how much of America's gun debate is not just about the Constitution. It's also about who pays, who gets sued, who gets protected, and who carries the burden when violence happens. That is the part people don't always put in the headline. A balanced view without the foolishness. All right, let's be grown and fair for a minute. What supporters of the ruling are saying. Supporters say this decision protects basic fairness. They argue that gun manufacturers make lawful products that millions of Americans own legally and responsibly. They say if a criminal traffics or misuses a gun, blame belongs on the criminal, the trafficker, or the rogue dealer, not automatically on the manufacturer farther up the chain. They also worry that without this protection, companies could get crushed by endless lawsuits over crimes they did not directly commit, and courts would end up making policy instead of Congress. That argument is not crazy. It is grounded in the idea that liability should have limits. What opponents of the ruling are saying. Opponents say this legal shield is too strong. They argue that when companies know their products are flowing into deadly illegal markets, and when their sales systems or marketing practices may help that happen, the court should not slam the door before a full case can even be heard. They believe broad immunity can block accountability and leave victims, families, and governments with fewer tools to fight gun violence. That argument is not crazy either. Now here is Auntie Grace's honest, slightly sassy truth. Both sides sometimes oversell their case. Some supporters talk like any lawsuit at all is anti-freedom nonsense. That is too simple. Some opponents talk like every manufacturer is basically co-signing every violent act committed with a gun. That is too simple too. Life is harder than slogans, honey. What the court said here was not gun violence is not serious. It was not trafficking is not real. It was not Mexico is wrong to be concerned. The court said, under this federal law and these allegations, this lawsuit cannot proceed. That is narrower than the loud folks online want you to believe. What you should know now. So what should regular viewers do with this information? First, do not let headlines outrun your understanding. If you hear 9-0 gun law bombshell, ask, what case? What issue? What changed exactly? Was it about carrying guns, banning guns, selling guns, or suing gun companies? Those are not the same thing. Second, understand that this case is mainly about the legal protection gun manufacturers have from certain lawsuits. It is not a national permission slip changing every gun rule in America overnight. Third, if you are a gun owner, stay current on your own state laws. This decision does not erase state permit rules, possession rules, storage laws, red flag laws, or local restrictions where those still exist and are being litigated. Don't get yourself in trouble because somebody on social media yelled, "The Supreme Court fixed everything." No, baby, that is how folks end up needing bail money. Fourth, if you care about gun safety, understand where the fight probably goes next. Legislatures, targeted enforcement, dealer oversight, and more carefully crafted lawsuits based on specific facts and specific laws. Fifth, if you care about the trafficking issue between the U.S. and Mexico, this ruling does not mean the underlying problem disappeared. Mexico still says huge numbers of guns used in crime there come from the United States, and the country has said it will keep pushing other legal and policy strategies. The court ruling ended this lawsuit path, but it did not solve the trafficking problem itself. And finally, I want you to understand this clearly. A Supreme Court ruling can be major without being total. This was a major ruling. It was unanimous. It will matter in future lawsuits, but it was not the final word on every gun debate in America. So, honey, here's the bottom line. The Supreme Court just gave a unanimous 9-0 victory to U.S. gun manufacturers in a major case brought by Mexico. The justices said that under the federal law already on the books, Mexico's lawsuit did not show enough specific wrongdoing by the manufacturers to move forward. That strengthens the legal shield around gun companies in cases based on crimes committed by third parties. That does not mean every gun law changed. That does not mean every future lawsuit is dead. That does not mean the gun debate is over. It means the court drew a clear line in this case and said, if you want to get past this shield, bring something more specific than this. And whether you love that result or hate it, you need to understand it correctly. Because confusion is expensive, fear is loud, and half-truths spread faster than wisdom. But baby, wisdom lasts longer. So, take a breath with me, stay informed, stay calm. Read deeper than the headline, and don't let anybody use a scary voice and a flashy thumbnail to do your thinking for you. If this breakdown helped you understand what this 9-0 ruling really means, go ahead and like this video, drop me a comment and tell me how you see it, subscribe if you want more straight talk without the mess, and share this with somebody who's confused and needs Auntie Grace to break it down plain. I love y'all. Be careful out there. Be thoughtful out there. And remember, being informed is a whole lot better than being manipulated.